Welcome to the Lighthouse Academy podcast, where we explore the future of learning, innovation, and academic excellence. In this episode, we dive into inquiry based learning in maths and science within the English national curriculum. By shifting from memorization to exploration, students develop critical thinking, problem solving, and real world application skills. How does inquiry based learning enhance mathematical reasoning and scientific discovery? How can it help students ask better questions, test ideas, and think like scientists and mathematicians? At Lighthouse Academy, we champion hands on, student led learning where curiosity drives understanding. Let's explore how inquiry fuels deeper learning and why it matters.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to really dig deep into something I know you're all interested in. Uh, Problem solving and inquiry-based learning
Oh, absolutely.
in maths and science education.
Yeah.
And how these really important skills are actually like woven into the English national curriculum.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not just about like knowing all the facts and figures, but about actually like equipping students with the tools to approach problems in like real world scenarios.
Yeah, it's like having that detective mindset. You're not just handed the solution. You have to investigate. You have to ask the right questions. You have to follow the clues to uncover that deep understanding.
It's like unlocking a treasure chest where like the treasure is deep understanding and the key is like asking the right questions and exploring like different approaches, right?
That's a great analogy. You see, it's not just about, knowing your times tables or the parts of a cell. It's about giving those students the tools that they need to approach any problem, whether it's in a textbook or in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And the English National Curriculum from Key Stage 1 all the way up to GCSEs is designed with this in mind.
Okay, that makes sense. But like the curriculum document itself is pretty huge. Are there like specific sections that really like zero in on these skills?
Absolutely. It's not just implied, it's actually there in black and white.
Okay,
The curriculum includes objectives specifically related to problem solving and scientific inquiry.
got it.
So these skills are embedded in every lesson. For instance, let's look at Key Stage 2 math.
Okay,
There's a focus on mathematical reasoning. What that means is students are encouraged to explain how they got their answer,
right.
to justify their answers, and to make connections between different concepts. And in science, there's a big emphasis on working scientifically,
Okay.
which involves designing experiments, analyzing data, and drawing conclusions based on evidence.
So it's not just about memorizing facts, but like actually like learning how to think like a scientist or a mathematician would.
Precisely. And these skills are like absolutely vital for success in GTSEs, where exams are now designed to test a student's ability to apply their knowledge in new and unfamiliar situations.
All right, let's get down to like the nitty-gritty here. Like how does this actually like play out in a classroom? Could you give me like a really clear, concrete example of how a teacher might actually foster these skills, let's say in a primary school setting?
Okay, sure. Let's imagine a year one class, right?
Okay.
And they're working on a classic problem, the Noah's Ark legs problem.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so they're given the total number of legs walking onto the ark, and they have to figure out just how many animals are there, knowing some animals have 2 legs and others have 4.
So beyond just like basic addition and subtraction, what other kind of thinking skills does a problem like that actually need?
It requires real strategic thinking and problem-solving skills.
Hmm.
Those kids have to consider different combinations of 2-legged and 4-legged animals. They got to think in a structured way, try out different approaches, and maybe even learn about making organized lists. It's training those young minds to approach those challenges strategically, a skill they'll use in pretty much every aspect of their lives.
I see how that seemingly really simple problem can really spark some deep thinking. What about like in secondary school? How does this inquiry-based approach, how does it look when the concepts get a little bit more complex?
Okay, let's jump to a Year 9 maths class. Imagine a design a zoo project. They're given a certain area, and they've got a budget. And they need to create enclosures for different animals, and each animal has specific space requirements.
This sounds really cool, like in theory, but isn't there a risk that the students could, I don't know, get so caught up in the fun of these projects that maybe don't actually master like the core mathematical concepts that they need?
That's a really good point and a valid concern.
Yeah.
That's where a skilled teacher comes in. A good teacher is going to ensure that these inquiry-based projects are carefully designed to align with the curriculum objectives.
Mm-hmm.
So while those students are busy designing their zoo, they're also applying concepts like area calculation, proportions, and maybe even some budgeting. It's real-world problem solving, and it's far more engaging than just working through textbook exercises, let's be honest. And it really reinforces those key maths objectives in a way it's meaningful and it sticks with them.
So they're learning by doing.
Exactly.
And it's all tied back to the curriculum. That's great. We've talked a lot about math, but I'm curious about science. How can teachers bring this inquiry-based approach to life in a science classroom?
Well, one really powerful tool is hands-on experimentation. Think about those classic science experiments like building a volcano with baking soda and vinegar.
Oh yeah, I remember doing those as a kid. It was mesmerizing.
Exactly. It's not just about witnessing a chemical reaction. It's about sparking curiosity and encouraging the students to ask, why did that happen? Or what would happen if we changed this ingredient?
So it's about nurturing that natural curiosity that kids have and turning it into a learning opportunity.
Exactly.
But as students progress through school, the concepts that they're learning, they become more complex. So how can hands-on activities still be effective when you're dealing with things that are kind of hard to visualize or experiment with directly?
Well, that's where technology can play a really big role.
Okay.
Think about tools like Explore Learning Gizmos. These are essentially virtual simulations
Right.
that allow students to experiment with concepts in a safe and engaging environment.
Okay, I've heard of gizmos, but can you give me like a specific example of how they might be used to actually foster inquiry-based learning?
Sure, absolutely. Imagine a science class studying the solar system. So instead of just looking at pictures in a textbook,
Right.
they could use a gizmo that lets them actually manipulate different variables
Oh, wow.
in a solar system model.
So they could change the distance between planets and then see how that affects their orbits. Or maybe even introduce like a new celestial object and see how it interacts with the existing planets.
You're exactly right.
Oh, cool.
They can test hypotheses, make predictions, and then they see the results of their choices immediately. This kind of hands-on experimentation, even though it's in a virtual environment, really reinforces those core scientific concepts, and it encourages a much deeper level of understanding.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how these different approaches can really complement each other. You've got the hands-on experiments that bring science to life, and then you've got tools like gizmos that let students kind of explore concepts that might be really difficult to replicate in a traditional classroom setting.
Exactly. And the key is to find that sweet spot, that right balance, and to use these approaches strategically to meet the specific needs of your students and the curriculum objectives that you're trying to hit.
This has all been really insightful. We've talked about the importance of problem solving and inquiry, how the curriculum supports these skills, and some of the strategies that teachers can use to bring them to life in the classroom. But how does this all tie back to the listener? Like why should they care about these approaches?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll be exploring in a lot more depth in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But for now, I'll leave you with this thought. These skills aren't just about passing exams or just doing well in school.
Right.
They're about developing the kind of adaptable, creative, and resilient thinkers that we need to solve the complex problems that our world is facing.
That's a really powerful thought. We'll be back after a short break to delve in deeper into the benefits of these approaches and how they can empower students to become lifelong learners. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were just talking about how problem solving and inquiry aren't just about, acing those exams. It's about building those essential life skills, those skills you need to just go through life.
Right. It's about equipping students to navigate a world that's constantly changing. We need creative and adaptable thinkers.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm totally sold on the why, on the importance.
Okay.
But how do we do it? We've talked about some general strategies, but what are some specific practical things that teachers can actually do to foster these skills in their classrooms? I'm thinking of things that could work, across key stages, different subjects.
Well, one of the most powerful tools I think a teacher has is questioning.
Okay.
The art of questioning. And it's not about, grilling students.
Right.
It's about guiding their thinking, sparking curiosity and prompting them to dig a little deeper.
So instead of just asking, what's the formula for the area of a triangle?
Right.
A teacher might ask, how could we figure out how much space this triangular garden bed takes up?
Exactly. By presenting a problem to solve, not just a fact to recall, you immediately engage those problem-solving muscles.
Right.
And this works beautifully in science too. Instead of just, stating Newton's laws of motion, a teacher could ask, what makes this roller coaster cart speed up or slow down at different points on the track?
So suddenly physics becomes about experiencing the world, not just memorizing equations.
Exactly.
I love it. What are some other practical strategies teachers can use?
Hands-on activities are absolutely crucial, especially in primary school. Imagine a year 3 science lesson where, students are given toy cars and ramps. And these ramps are covered in different materials like sandpaper or carpet or even smooth wood. They can experiment by rolling the cars down the ramps and just observing how far they travel on each surface.
So they're not just learning about friction in a textbook, they're actually experiencing it.
Exactly. And this principle applies at the secondary level as well. Think about a Key Stage 4 biology class investigating the factors that affect plant growth. Instead of just reading about photosynthesis,
Right.
they could design an experiment, grow their own plants under different conditions, collect data, analyze results.
Right.
It becomes a real scientific investigation.
That's a great example, but those experiments take time and resources. So how can teachers realistically incorporate these kinds of activities, especially when, they're under pressure to cover a lot of content?
You're absolutely right. It's about finding a balance. It doesn't have to be, a grand experiment every single day.
Right.
Even small, quick activities can be really impactful. Imagine a year 7 maths class and they're working on angles. So instead of just having them measure angles on paper,
Mm-hmm.
you could have them use protractors to measure angles in the classroom itself.
So they're applying those geometry concepts to the world around them.
Exactly. It makes the learning more relevant,
Mm-hmm.
more engaging, and it doesn't require a ton of extra planning or resources.
Right.
Another really effective strategy is to incorporate more collaborative problem-solving tasks where students work together to tackle a challenge.
Like that Design a Zoo project that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Or even something as simple as a group activity where, let's say, Key Stage 2 students have to figure out the best way to build a tower using only paper and tape. So they're learning about structures, stability, problem-solving, teamwork, all at the same time.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's about making those connections between the abstract concepts and
Yeah.
the real world applications.
You're absolutely right. And by doing that, we're not only making learning more engaging, but we're also preparing them for those high-stakes GCSE exams.
Okay, that actually brings up a question that I've been wanting to ask. A lot of teachers are under a lot of pressure to prepare students for those exams.
For sure.
So how do we balance like fostering genuine inquiry with the need to actually cover specific content and exam techniques?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the good news is that it's not an either-or situation.
Okay.
In fact, the inquiry-based approach can actually enhance exam performance.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it this way. When students truly understand a concept, they're far more likely to actually apply it correctly in an exam situation, even if the question is worded in an unfamiliar way.
So they've developed those critical thinking skills to analyze the problem, figure out what's being asked, and then apply their knowledge strategically.
Exactly. They haven't just memorized a formula. They've internalized the underlying concept.
Mm-hmm.
And there are specific strategies teachers can use to bridge that gap between inquiry-based learning and exam preparation. For example, in maths, they can incorporate exam-style questions into problem-solving activities.
Okay.
So instead of just, finding the area of a rectangle, students might have to calculate how much paint is needed to cover a wall with a certain area, taking into account things like windows and doors.
That's brilliant. It brings those abstract concepts to life.
Yeah.
And helps students see how they're relevant in real world situations.
Exactly. And in science, teachers can guide students in analyzing past exam papers. But the focus shouldn't be on memorizing answers. It should be on understanding the types of questions that are asked, the level of detail required, and the scientific reasoning that's expected.
So it's not about teaching to the test, but it's about teaching students how to think, like a scientist or a mathematician,
Right.
which will ultimately benefit them in the exam.
Precisely. And remember those digital tools that we were talking about earlier, things like Explore Learning Gizmos?
Mm-hmm.
They can play a big role in GCSE preparation as well. Imagine a science class using a gizmo to explore the factors affecting enzyme activity.
So instead of just reading about enzymes in a textbook, they can manipulate variables, see the effects in real time, and really grasp the concept.
Exactly. And then they can apply that deep understanding to analyze experimental data in an exam question. Even if it involves an enzyme they've never even encountered before, it's about building those transferable skills.
So it all comes back to that, doesn't it? It's not about rote memorization. It's about empowering students to become confident problem solvers,
Yes.
critical thinkers, and ultimately lifelong learners.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's precisely what we're so passionate about at Lighthouse Academy.
Speaking of Lighthouse Academy, we have some incredible resources and professional development opportunities that can really help teachers implement these inquiry-based teaching methods.
Absolutely. We offer workshops that are tailored for teachers at all levels, from primary through secondary, covering both math and science. We're exploring practical strategies, sharing real-world classroom examples, and demonstrating how to use those Explore Learning Gizmos to their full potential.
It sounds like a really fantastic opportunity for teachers to kind of enhance their skills and really transform their classrooms into hubs of inquiry and discovery.
Exactly. We believe that every student has the potential to be a brilliant problem solver, and we're here to support teachers in unlocking that potential.
This whole deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
We've explored the why, the how, and even dipped our toes into the what next of problem solving and inquiry-based learning. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder. Think about a subject that you personally find challenging.
Yeah, it could be anything: history, literature, even art.
Now imagine how those principles of inquiry-based learning could be applied to that subject. How could you transform it from a passive experience into an active exploration?
Yeah.
What questions could you ask? What kind of hands-on or technology-based activities could you engage in?
Hold on to that thought. We'll be right back to discuss some final takeaways and resources to help you on your journey toward becoming a master of inquiry-based learning, no matter the subject.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we went to chat, we challenged you to think about a subject you find personally challenging.
Yeah, did you come up with any interesting ideas?
I certainly did. It really made me realize that we can all be a lot more proactive in our learning, no matter what the topic is. But let's shift gears for a second and kind of recap some of the key takeaways from our deep dive into problem solving and inquiry in math and science.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that these skills are absolutely crucial, not just for academic success, but for thriving in a world that's full of complexity and constantly evolving.
Right.
The English National Curriculum really recognizes how important this is. And that's why it emphasizes these skills at every level, from primary school right through to GCSEs.
We've seen how even like seemingly simple activities like the Noah's Ark legs problem can lay the foundation for logical thinking and strategic problem solving in younger learners.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as students progress, those skills are further developed through hands-on investigations, real-world scenarios, and collaborative projects.
And let's not forget about the power of technology. Tools like Explore Learning Gizmos
Right.
offer a fantastic way for students to experiment, to visualize complex concepts, and to test their hypotheses in a safe and engaging environment.
It's all about giving them the tools to become active learners, not just passive recipients of information.
Absolutely. And remember, it's never too late to embrace inquiry-based learning. Even if you're not a student or a teacher, you can apply these principles to your own personal and professional development as well.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? What's the one thing that we hope you take away from this deep dive?
It's simple. Never stop questioning, never stop exploring, and challenge yourself to think differently. Whether you're tackling a complex maths problem, designing a science experiment, or just simply trying to understand a new concept, embrace the spirit of inquiry.
And if you're an educator looking for practical strategies and resources to bring inquiry-based learning to life in your classroom,
Yeah.
Lighthouse Academy is here to support you every step of the way. We have workshops, online courses, expert consultations, you name it, we've got you covered.
We believe that every student deserves the opportunity to experience the joy of discovery, the thrill of solving a challenging problem, and the confidence that comes from knowing how to think critically and creatively.
And that's exactly what we strive to cultivate here at Lighthouse Academy. So keep those curious minds engaged, keep those questions flowing, and keep that passion for learning alive. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to expand your horizons and ignite your imagination.